Hi there, and I decided, like many people, to share my thoughts on The Last of Us Part 2. I've completed it, and I'm just half a playthrough away from platinum at the moment. I have some feelings about the game, um, and bear in mind that everything that follows this moment is a spoiler. So if you haven't completed the game and don't want any spoilers, just stop watching and come back to it when you have. Um, so a couple of caveats before we get going. First and foremost, The Last of Us, the original game, is my favorite game of all time. And I've been playing computer games since 1979, and I put a 10p piece into a tabletop Space Invaders machine. So I have played games across all formats: ZX81, ZX Spectrum, Atari ST, PlayStation, handhelds like the Game Boy Advance, and laptops as well. So I've played a lot of games. So it's quite a big thing over 41 years to say that this game is my favorite. And I was among a lot of people who didn't necessarily think it needed a sequel, but when a sequel was announced, I was happy. I was looking forward to it because Naughty Dog is such an incredible developer. So first game is my favorite game of all time. Second caveat, I don't give a stuff that Joel died. Don't care. Absolutely don't care. When it was first announced that Ellie was going to be the main protagonist here, I thought, well, they can't use Joel. That's not going to work. Because, Ellie was a tag-along with Joel for the majority of the first game, and Joel was this big, brutish, physical mass of a man, and Ellie's interactions were kind of distant, and she would occasionally stab someone when they grabbed him, or she'd shoot from a distance. That made sense. He was this powerful physical force. If you swap those roles, Ellie, with the best will of the world, even though we're 4 years later on, she's not going to be as physically strong or as brutish as Joel, because she's smaller and physically not as strong. So to have Ellie's, obviously by rote of who she is, to have a more kind of agile, slow, kind of stealthy approach, it would be incongruous to have the hulking great Joel alongside her for the majority of the game. And when they talked about this whole thing about hate, the fact that it was a game about hate, not love, really logically for me, even back in 2016, whenever it was first announced, I thought, well, yeah, Joel's going to die, or he's not going to have a lot to do. So I have no problem with Joel being dead, and I don't necessarily have a massive issue with the manner of his death. He was a violent man who had crossed an awful lot of people. He'd done incredibly sadistic things. He's not a hero. He's a hero of his own story because he rescued and saved Ellie, and that was his redemption for the death of Sarah. And the depth of his character and what we saw develop over the original game, although I don't agree with the decision he made necessarily, I can understand it entirely, but that does not make him heroic. He's not a hero. And the fact that eventually his past catches up to him and he's murdered in an incredibly brutal fashion is actually not incongruous. It fits his character. It's the kind of death that probably would happen to Joel eventually. And people complaining that he didn't get a hero's death. He's not a hero. Did he actually deserve a hero's death? Probably not. He was a borderline psychotic, to be honest with you. And his redemption in the game, the original game, was his own redemption. But his redemption condemned potentially an entire species to a slow and dwindling death. So I don't have a problem with Joel dying at all, and have that as a catalyst for Ellie's revenge story. So no problem with that. So if you've review bombed the game simply because your favorite character died, you're unlikely to care for this at all. Also, I have absolutely no problem at all with the fact that there are representations of lesbian and transgender characters in this story. I think it's entirely fits within. We knew that that Ellie was a lesbian from the DLC that happened, the Left Behind DLC, and having a transgender character, although it was slightly heavy-handed, the manner in which that was done, it was, again, it fitted with the character, it fitted with the context, and I have absolutely no problem with that. In fact, Lev is likely my favorite character in the game. I thought Lev was great, really enjoyed it. And again, the fact that there was a lesbian couple, so what? Big deal. Seriously, if you've given this game a 0 out of 10 because there were lesbians in it and there was a bit of a kiss between them, seriously, that scene between Ellie and Dina was really sweet and lovely. The sex scene later on between Owen and Abby was flipping awful. completely out of character and just looked wrong. It didn't add anything. It didn't add any value. So seriously, I don't give a stuff. So if you've review bombed this because it's got lesbians in it, well, tough beans, to be honest with you. I don't give a stuff. You may as well dislike the video now and leave, because I don't care, because they are still over. There's many more heterosexual characters. You know, Dina is bisexual, but she's had a relationship with Jesse. You've got Tommy and Maria in a heterosexual relationship. You've got a heterosexual love triangle between Owen, Abby, and Mel. You've also got, was it Jordan and Leah were a heterosexual couple, and you've also got Manny, who essentially was shagging his way throughout all the wolves. So seriously, if you've got a problem with that, just stop the video now and leave, because I have no time for that at all, to be honest with you. It was not SJW. It was not put it in there just to serve an agenda. It was a fairly sensible and nicely realized representation. So, you know, seriously, get over yourselves, guys. Also, if you are among the number of people who have at any point said anything unkind, from generally just being unkind through to anti-Semitic, racist, or even sending death threats because a computer game didn't go the way that you fancied it, again, dislike this video and leave right now, because you're an idiot. Seriously, got no time for you at all. Don't care, don't give a stuff. I have opinions of this game. I didn't like it as much as I'd like it. I didn't engage with it as much as I wanted to, but I am not going to threaten death to the people who created it, nor their families, because that is what an insane person does. I didn't like the game as much as I wanted. I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it. At the same time, I'm not going to go on a rampage and tell people that they got all the stupid anti-Semitic stuff that was thrown at Neil Druckmann and the death threats to Laura Bailey, who's an actress who was employed to play a part. She's not Abby. Come on, guys. If you think that, you need to get some help. Okay? So there you go. Those caveats are out of the way. But I do have issues with the way the story was told. I have some issues with the story. I have issues with the structure and the way the characters were dealt with, which is what led me to disengage with the game somewhat. I didn't enjoy it as much as I wanted to. Let's get out of the way. We know, I mean, anybody who's given this 0 out of 10 is, again, slightly weird, because it's not a 0 out of 10 game. Life with Black Tiger is a 0 out of 10 game. But a 0 out of 10 game means it's just broken across the board, completely broken across the board. And the game is not broken across the board. The environmental detail is exceptional. It's a beautiful, in context, a beautiful game. It's one of the most beautiful games on the system. The level design is exquisite, absolutely exquisite. The way that they put those levels together to help the gameplay feel really dynamic. And the gameplay itself, although not revolutionary, is solid and fun to play. That's one of the things I'll come back to, this whole idea of it being fun. And the voice acting and the performance capture is exemplary. It really is. And Laura Bailey in particular and Ashley Johnson are fantastic. But every single member, Troy Baker, in the bits that he's in, again, he imbues Joel with this humanity, despite the fact that he is a slightly psychotic, murderous human being. He is someone who has been driven to that because of tragedy and because of trauma. And he brings that quite beautifully and obviously cares very, very deeply for Ellie. So in every scene that he and Ellie have together is a joy, to be honest with you. And the interplay between Evie and Lev, again, the actor who played Lev, absolutely brilliantly done. I really enjoyed his character. And I also really liked Abby's character as well, possibly a little bit more than Ellie. So it's not an 0 out of 10 game by any stretch of the imagination, because it's just too technically proficient to do that. You can play the game. You might not like the story, but the game is absolutely playable. Where it falls down for me is the structure of the story. And again, I'm not having a go at Haley Gross or Neil Druckmann for that. They had a vision that they wanted. They wrote the story that they wanted to tell, and they very bravely knew that there would be fallback for what they said, that there would be plenty of people out there who didn't enjoy the direction they took. They said it would be divisive. I mean, Troy Baker said in a tweet shortly before it launched that it would be divisive and people wouldn't necessarily like it as much as they think they do. And they had a vision and they realized it. And as creative people, that's all you can do. The second you pander to fan service, you end up with a mess, to be honest with you, because bless them, fans, I'm not a writer, although I'm going to talk about structural problems, but it's the way I engage with it. Not a criticism of the way it was written. It was a criticism of the fact that the way it was written didn't engage with me as much as I'd like, and the reasons for that. So again, they told the story they wanted to tell, and it wasn't a bad story. I just thought that it was structurally, its structure actually damaged its ability to make you connect with various characters. So there will be comparisons to The Last of Us Part 1, and as a result, spoilers for The Last of Us Part 1 as well. The Last of Us Part 1, the strength of the game was the central relationship between Joel and Ellie, and the fact that that relationship grew over a period of 16 hours of gameplay, or roughly 16 hours, because there's a short bit at the beginning when, you know, Ellie isn't even born yet, you know, before the outbreak, when Joel is with Sarah, which is that incredibly traumatic event, which underpins why his character is the way he is. And a couple of short sections where they're not together. But, you know, for the bulk, for kind of 90% of the game, you're playing as Joel and Ellie, and they are together for that whole time. And it's over a 12-month period where they go from being highly suspicious of each other to gaining a kind of a begrudging mutual trust, to a burgeoning relationship, to, in the end, a father-daughter relationship. And it is beautifully realized through not just the cutscenes, but also through the incidental stuff. The thing that Naughty Dog do so well is that environmental storytelling, you know, where they the conversations that happen between the characters as you are traversing the environments. It is exquisite, it really is. And any other character that comes in is again beautifully realized. And the reason it works so well is, firstly, you get to spend a significant amount of time with each of the new characters that are introduced. You know, you're with Tess for about an hour and a half of the game. Bill's about an hour of gameplay. Then you've got Sam and Henry, which is quite extended. You know, and David as well. You're given an opportunity to know these characters. But the critical thing is that they are new to you, and they are new to the characters. So, you know, although Tess has an established relationship with Joel, she doesn't with Ellie. So from Ellie's perspective, you see the relationship with Tess develop. Same with Bill. I love some of the interjections between Bill and Ellie, because Bill goes, you know, well, you're going to have to stay right on my arse. And Ellie's going, you can't miss it, because he's a big bloke. And although Joel knew him, there was this lovely relationship that built between Ellie and Bill, which was, you know, antagonistic. He's a stupid bratty kid, and she was saying stupid fat old man. And again, that brought the characters into kind of sharp relief, because they were new and they were having to learn each other. And then, you know, with Sam and with Henry, my favorite part actually of the original Last of Us is the journey through the sewers, when you learn the story of Ish. And I wish there was a DLC about Ish. You haven't, you know, really read everything. That sewer bit, you know, with the community that's living underground, read every single note you get there, because the story that's told is incredible and quite tragic. And I'd love to have been able to play it at some point. But again, you begin to see, you know, Sam and Ellie, finally, they've got two people their own age they can interact with, and they're allowed to be children for a little while. And even with Henry and Joel, you begin to get that sense of flipping kids, and you get that kind of that element of bonding, which made their deaths utterly tragic. I cried 5 times throughout the original Last of Us. When Sarah died, when Tess died, when Sam and Henry died, when Ellie and Joel had that argument when Ellie had run off and she was reading the diary of the kids. She goes, everyone's cleanly left me but you, which is a wonderfully powerful moment. And the bit at the end after Ellie has killed David, when they, you know, that hug moment where he's going, oh baby girl, and you finally see them as a kind of father-daughter relationship that's finally cemented. 5 instances, proper full-on man tears, you know, just wetting the front of my t-shirt. I vividly remember sitting wearing a white t-shirt after the death of Sarah, and just the whole of the front of my t-shirt being damp because of my tears. It was that powerful. Didn't cry at all during The Last of Us Part 2. And the reason for that is that for the majority of the game, Ellie's on her own, or Abby is on her own. Therefore, you're not getting that back and forth with a character to build a relationship. When we do spend time with characters, we spend very short periods of time with them. So Dina, we spend a fair amount of time with, but again, the problem with the relationship with Dina and Jesse is that it's 4 years old. We've never seen that develop. We assume that they know each other. They've known each other for 4 years, and therefore there is little place for the relationship to go. There's no development because they know each other really well. They're friends. They fought together. You know, they have been in danger together. They have lived together for 4 years, and therefore they're established. And as a result, very little growth happens. You know, a little bit with Dina and Ellie as their relationship matures, but not much. So I don't care about them so much. Jesse, I really don't care about very much. There's a bit when you're playing with Jesse where he explains that he came because, you know, he admired Joel. But that's the only time we find out that he admired Joel. We don't see Jesse in the aftermath of Joel's death, you know, seeing how powerfully it affected him. We don't get any sense of that beforehand. It's just a throwaway line that's meant to go, oh, that's why it's all right, fair enough. And there is a fair amount of exposition where you have to rely on an awful lot of exposition in this game rather than the beautifully, you know, paced stuff that you get in the original. So I didn't care particularly. So when Jesse got shot and killed, I was like, whoa, it was shocking. And that's the thing for me, is that the original Last of Us, it drew you in, it emotionally connected with you. So when Sarah died, you felt you were actually in that scene, you know, the close-ups of Joel cradling his daughter in his arms and just looking at Tommy in that panic. I don't know what to do. I really don't know what to do. That wonderful moment, it drew you in. I was part of that scene. I felt Joel's pain. Similarly, when Tess died, that fabulous dialogue between Tess and Joel, you know, it draws you in. Every single time there was an emotional moment in the original Last of Us, it pulled you into the story. And that never gets old, because we want to emotionally connect with people. That kind of storytelling doesn't get old, because we want connections. Shock does get old, because what shock does, it pushes you away from something. So when Joel was originally killed, that was shocking. I was watching it with my hands over my mouth like this. I was just so engrossed with it. I was thinking, oh crap, I knew what was coming. And when it did come, it was shocking. And the aftermath of that, the little bit of was reasonably well done, but it was shocking. It pushed me away rather than drew me in. Same with Jesse. When Jesse got killed, it was bang, dead. And I was like, whoa, I was shocked. But I was not emotionally involved because I didn't really care that much about Jesse, because he was a cool character. I liked him, but I hadn't spent very much time with him. And that's the issue. And we get into Abby. So that bait and switch you get, that moment Jesse is killed, that moment Abby is in theatre with Ellie, and the confrontation, you think, wow, we've been building to this for roughly 16 hours, which is the length of the original game. Okay, and then Jesse's dead, and you're feeling, what? And then you're playing as Abby. No, I have no problem playing as Abby at all. I like Abby as a character, and I would like some context. But the fact is that that's completely ruined the pace of the game. Totally ruined the pace of the game. This wonderful build-up, this build-up that had happened, suddenly was taken away from you. You had no time to mourn Jesse, even if you cared about him, because suddenly you're in a situation, go, what? I'm playing as that. And that was forgotten, because now you're completely shaken because you're playing as a different character, and you think, oh, well, I'm not going to be here for very long. So you establish a backstory with that flashback, and you go, oh, right, okay, fair enough, that's why she killed Joel. Okay, get that. And then you start playing as her, you know, in the time, you know, in the same 3 days as Ellie played, and you are suddenly going, hold a minute. And you know, you see that you've got an upgrade path, and then you pick up an upgrade manual, and you've got weapons that you can upgrade at benches, and you think, how long am I staying here? And you spend probably another 12 hours with Abby in what is a really interesting arc. I liked Abby as a character. She was driven, you know, the fact that, you know, she ruined her relationship with Owen because of her obsession with killing Joel, and she transformed herself physically. So, you know, she's a huge, I mean, if you have a look at the actress the sportswoman that Abby's physical form is based upon, she's one of the Ninja Warrior guys. I mean, she is incredibly fit and strong, you know. So the fact that Abby had trained herself to be this force of nature that was capable of taking down Joel, who is a big, strong, brutish man, that transformation, which alienated her from the people that she loved, she pushed them away and became obsessed with this. the manifestation of her build was also a manifestation of a desire to be prepared to do this. So she was, you know, an incredibly powerful character, played very differently to Ellie as a result. It's actually, she played very similarly to Joel. Weirdly enough, I don't know whether that was intentional or not, but no. So we got this element of Abby, but again, the characters we don't give a crap about because we don't spend any time with them. We already know they're dead because we've seen every single one of our friends already killed by by Ellie, which, you know, made you go, yeah. But Jordan, which was the first one we saw killed, how much time have we spent with him? In Ellie's bit, well, in Ellie's bit, he was at the beginning, sliced her face, and that very, very short scene. So we spent maybe a minute and a half of time with Jordan, and then Abby as an optional thing. You don't have to do this. I missed it on my first playthrough, but you can talk to Jordan at the beginning of Abby's section, and he's playing a Vita, just having a chat, and then that's maybe another 20 seconds. So we spend less than 2 minutes with Jordan, and we're supposed to feel sorry for the fact that he's dead. Same with Nora. We don't spend any time with Nora. In the original bit, we see a couple of scenes with her, maybe again 30 seconds if we're lucky. In the Abby story, we spend hardly, in Ellie's story, we get to meet her with that scene, very short scene, and then there's a chase sequence and another short scene, which, you know, again, actual contact with Nora lasts 40 seconds, a minute. And then there's a very, very short section, or two very short sections with Abby, where we again spend maybe a minute, and we're introduced, oh God, Danny's dead. Who's Danny? I don't know who Danny is. I can't remember who Danny is. None of the names were given at the beginning. We weren't introduced to any of the characters that went to Jackson with Abby, other than Owen, really. So I was going, who's Danny? I don't really care. Okay, fine. I don't care the fact that he's dead. And I didn't really care the fact that Nora's dead, because again, I spent about 3 minutes with her. And there was no character growth. There was no sense of her connection and her importance to Abby. And Owen a little bit more. We spend far more time with Owen, but again, not an extraordinary amount of time. It's mainly done in cutscenes with a little bit of action. And Mel, don't really care. Manny, spent a little bit more time with Manny, but again, not enough time to get particularly attached to him. And then he gets shot in the face by Tommy, and he's done. And that was the biggest problem, is that firstly, we knew all these guys were dead anyway, and secondly, they had no impact on us emotionally because we didn't get to spend significant time with them. So, you know, I didn't care. I honestly did not care at all about any of these characters. Say a little bit about Owen, because I liked Owen. He was a bit more complex. You could see that he was tired of all the killing and just wanted to go somewhere and live his life and get back to the Fireflies, because the Fireflies at least were trying to do something valuable rather than just, you know, defend Seattle. So again, I didn't care, and because they were already dead, it made, you know, I just, oh yeah, they're dead, all right, fine. And that's why the structure didn't work for me, because I wasn't given time to get to know these characters and care about them and understand why it was driving Abby. That changed when we met Lev and Yara. Not so much Yara, particularly Lev, because we spent a significant time with them. You know, they were in peril, and it allowed Abby to humanize herself a little bit and be fighting for something other than revenge and other than just merciless killing. She saw the other side of the story, again, slightly heavy-handed on occasion, but generally that was lovely because it allowed Abby to begin to feel redemption. And you see the flashbacks, you know, she has dreams of her father being murdered, and then, you know, going through the corridor in the hospital and seeing Yara and Lev hanging and gutted. And at the end, once she's kind of rescued Lev, and the last one is of her father alive, which shows that she's managed to process her grief for that and can finally move forward. And her relationship with Lev was part of that. And that was probably one of the most well-developed relationships. I think it's because you spent the most time with her. Now, there's some lovely moments and some incredible set pieces that, you know, you had with Lev, you know, that walk across the cranes and the attack, the assault on the Seraphite Island. But again, because, and then we come full circle to understand where Abby is when she's threatening. She's just shot Jesse and killed Jesse, and she's threatening Ellie, and now we're back. But again, it's 12 hours to get there, and I'm feeling going through the motions by this point because I've lost connection with Ellie now because it's such a long time since I've seen her. I've had to focus on Abby for such a long time. For my money, for my view, I think that the decision to have the game in two separate halves was narratively, it was wrong. There's plenty of people who disagree with me and I love it. There's plenty of people who are full of vitriol for the whole thing. For me, the relationships would have been worked better if they worked side by side, because then, you know, we'd have got to have known a little bit more about the characters before Ellie murdered them. And then, you know, and we're talking murder here, not killing, not self-defense. This is murder. Come to that. Is that if they'd been parallel to each other, rather than thinking, hello, let's go 16 hours in and then just pull the rug out from that. Let's shock them. Again, shock pushes you away from a situation, doesn't draw you in. And you know, shock gets, if you walk up behind someone and go boo too many times, eventually they just go, oh, shut up. And that's what I felt a lot during this game. Oh, here's another shocking bit, flipping out, here we go. Having those stories run parallel would have given a greater context to what was going on. And that's what an awful lot of this, look, you didn't get context until too far into the game. And by which case, you know, you'd got 16 hours of gameplay and really you'd have to play through the game again to get context. Well, not everyone's got time to play through 30-hour games twice. You know, I'm managing to get through it a second time, but I'm going through the motions. I'm doing collectibles. I want the platinum. I'm not necessarily doing it because I want to and enjoy the story. Whereas I've played through the original Last of Us 6 times and engage with it every single time I play it, and probably cry every single time I play it. That structure ultimately for me disengaged, and it didn't work for me. If it had been run in parallel, swapped between Ellie and Abby, that would have made more sense to me. That would have been narratively, that structure would have put more context and would have made me feel a little bit more involved and would have questioned Ellie far more and would have warmed to Abby far more quickly to see those kind of stories told together over the same 3 days, which was an interesting narrative construct. But again, 3 days is not enough time to get to know people, whereas the original game gave you a year for these characters to get to know you. There's no real room for growth because it was over such a short period of time. So I think that narrative structure was a mistake from the perspective of my enjoyment of the game. But also the ending. There was a perfect ending to the game for me. Absolutely perfect ending to the game. You're playing as Abby and you're actually, you know, your final boss fight is against Ellie, which is a great reversal of fortune. And there's the bit when, you know, at the end when Abby has Dina at mercy and Ellie goes, you know, she's pregnant, and, you know, Abby goes, good, because you just murdered her pregnant friend. And Lev goes, Abby, and Abby suddenly realizes that, holy shit, I need to stop this. This is getting out of hand. I need to make a decision. She was about to murder a pregnant woman, but now there is more. You know, she's got someone to care with in effect. Very heavy-handedly, Abby and Lev are Joel and Ellie, you know, and she realizes that she can't continue this way if she is ever going to have a relationship with this boy that she's been protecting for, you know, for the last day and a half, no, not a year, day and a half. And she finishes at that point and she says, right, I've had enough. And she disappears off to go and find the Fireflies, which would have been a nice Last of Us Part 3, Lev and Abby looking for the Fireflies. That would have been a nice way of doing that. Established characters we know, understood the motivations of, perfect. And you've got that lovely dynamic. And then Ellie goes back and you see her with this farm with, you know, Dina's baby and a lovely relationship with Dina, and happy, haunted but happy. And then Tommy comes, and Tommy is the one that can't let go. That would have been a perfect place to stop that whole cycle of violence. You could have had Ellie let go and live out a life with Dina and JJ. And the cycle of violence that continues is illustrated by the fact that it's now destroyed Tommy. You know, he's injured, he's embittered, it has ruined his relationship with Maria. They're taking a break and he can't let go, but Ellie could. So we've got this whole sense of the cycle of violence, you know, continues, that if you don't let it go, it will destroy you, because we had Tommy quite beautifully demonstrating that. But the fact that these people have gone, enough, it haunts me, but I'm over it. And that would have been a beautiful place to stop. But instead, we get this entirely unnecessary final hour and a half in Santa Monica, where we're introduced to a really fascinating faction, but we're only introduced to them. We don't really learn anything about them. The Rattlers, I think, are fantastic. I was really intrigued, but there's no development, again, because it's an hour and a half. It's tagged on at the end, and it's a means for Ellie to have her own redemption, you know. And the thing I didn't like about the whole thing is they had to contrive a situation where Ellie could beat one-on-one Abby, because there's no way Ellie could beat Abby on a one-to-one fist fight, because Abby physically could overpower her at every stage. She's a soldier. She is proficient. She's experienced. She is probably more experienced, more proficient than Ellie, because she's been properly trained by military people. And there is no way in a one-on-one that Ellie could beat Abby. So let's contrive a situation where Abby can be beaten by Ellie by introducing at the very last minute this faction who kidnaps Abby in the first 10 minutes of us playing with Abby again. And then we don't see Abby again until we realize, oh my goodness, she's been kidnapped, these people, she's been a slave for 3 months, and she's lost all her body mass, and she's lost all her strength because she's been crucified for a few days. And she's a shadow of her former self, which gives Ellie the ability to overpower her. It's incredibly contrived. I didn't like it. As intense that final battle is, I actually at one point stopped playing because I thought, I don't want to fight. I don't want to fight Abby. So I wondered, if I don't fight, do I lose? And Abby killed me. So, you know, I had to fight Abby to get to that conclusion, which is similar to the one at the end of The Last of Us, where it's not your story, this is the character's story, and they will make their own decisions. You don't get to make decisions for them. And I'm comfortable with that because narratively it works. But what it did for me, and the thing that really annoyed me, is it ultimately gave Ellie, despite everything that she'd done, the moral high ground. Because you'd had the point, Ellie was consumed with revenge, just as Abby had been when she murdered Joel. Abby had managed to move past it. You know, what she'd done was wrong. You know, you don't murder people, it is wrong, but the justification of that murder is just as justified as the murders that Joel did in rescuing Ellie, and potentially more justified because of the murder of a father figure, or an actual father. But it allowed Ellie to let her go, which gave Ellie the moral high ground. And at no point in this game did Ellie have the moral high ground at all. There was no way. She was murdering people, not killing them, murdering them. So it gave her the moral high ground. And I'll probably do another video about a lovely fan theory about the end, where I believe she did actually get some peace. That ending at the farmhouse is not as bleak as it looks. There's a lovely fan theory out there, which, considering the attention to detail Naughty Dog have, I would imagine Naughty Dog were going for that. But I'm going to do a separate video on that anyway. But she has a kind of, you know, she lets her go, and she lets go of the hate. And she, again, just as Abby saw her father alive at the end, ultimately Ellie sees Joel playing his guitar on the porch, which indicates that this is enough. I need to focus on the positive. And she lets Abby go, but again, gives her the moral high ground, and really screws up progression for the last game. You know, she becomes almost, I mean, a Les Miserables reference here, but, you know, Javert, this person who destroys themselves through their obsession. Whereas, you know, Abby is Valjean, who does something wrong, but over a period of time, you know, manages to overcome that. You know, it's quite Les Miserables, I wonder. Anyway, but that was the bit that didn't sit well with me. The last hour and a half was completely rushed and totally unnecessary. We had a conclusion that worked, and it was just another a means to go out and just murder a load of people. And this is, you know, kind of wrapping up. One of the things that I had the biggest problem with, I'm just going to find a quote from Neil Druckmann about The Last of Us Part 2, and explain why actually that quote, although it was intriguing me at the time, actually didn't work in the context of the final product. So this is a blog that I wrote a couple of years ago about, you know, do games have to be fun in the modern gaming age? By all means, check out the YouTube channel and have a look at it. I'm really proud of that one. It's one of my favorite videos I've ever done. But this is a quote from Neil Druckmann. And this is where I think the biggest disconnect happens with the game. For us, with The Last of Us specifically, we don't want to use the word fun. We say engaging. And it might seem like a minor distinction, but it's an important one for us. So we don't want the game to be fun. We want it to be engaging. So I'm just going to stop sharing that. The problem is the game is a lot of fun. It's fabulously fun to play. The level design, like I said right at the beginning, is awesome. And the new skills, although it's not revolutionary, we've got a dodge button. Well, we've been able to dodge for years, and we've been able to prone, go prone in Metal Gear Solid and other games. The actual gameplay tweaks were not revolutionary at all. We've been doing it with many games, but actually in the context of the way the levels were designed, the AI of the enemies, and the skill set of the character, actually it became an awful lot of fun, because you could be stealthy, and then if you broke stealth, you could take a few out aggressively and then hide yourself, get back into stealth, leave a bomb behind you, so when they find you, blow up, and you've got it's chaotic, it was visceral, it was really good fun. And one of the problems is it becomes so much fun, and you want to collect all the collectibles, and you want to have as many things, that rather than actually sneaking through an area, you'd murderize everyone because you wanted to search the area to pick up any resources. And therein lies the problem, because it was fun. And actually you wanted to murder a load of people, and I know they wanted to make the violence as visceral as possible, so you started questioning whether you should be doing it, but I didn't, because it was fun. It was really good fun. And Ellie as well, she was like, when she was murdering people, she's going, yeah, fuck yeah. And she was really, there was such a coldness and a lack of compassion to the murder. In the first game, you were killing people. This is a distinction. You were killing people. You're on a quest. This is a good old quest. Ellie is a cure for mankind. We're trying to get Ellie to a place where she can create or be part of that cure. Okay. As a result, there is a justification to the journey. And it is a journey. It is a journey from A to Z, ultimately, with a few wiggles in between, with a purpose that is beneficial and valuable to mankind. Therefore, when you get to combat situations, there is a justification for all the murder you do, because again, immediately they're more aggressive, because you've got you've got hunters. They will murder people and scavenge. That's what they do. But you are trying to progress because you have a cause. There is something worth fighting for. At the end, obviously, that's screwed up by Joel by being all selfish and saving Ellie rather than allowing her to die and saving mankind. Again, that's a lovely moral ambiguity of that game, which people still discuss today. It's brilliant. There is no quest. There is no value to this journey. Right from the beginning, you are murdering the WLF. You are murdering the Seraphites, because there is no necessity for you to be there, because all you want to do is to satisfy a feeling of vengeance, which is not a just cause. And therefore, you're not killing people on a journey to save mankind. You are murdering people to satisfy your own bloodlust. And that was the problem with the disconnect, in as much as the game was too long. 30 didn't need to be 30 hours. My son finished it in 26. I finished it in 30. Didn't need to be 30 hours long. Absolutely had massive pacing issues, and the thing is, many more people to murder and kill, and they were, when you're stabbing people in the throat, stuff like that. But eventually what happened is I murdered everybody. I killed everybody in a level, because I was after collectibles. I was after making sure I had enough material, so I'd quite happily murder people, and murdering people was fun to do. Picking off a fantastic headshot with a bow. When the dogs were tracking, I had no problem murdering dogs. To be honest with you, I love dogs. Dogs are one of my favorite animals ever. But when they've got the scent, simple thing is to drop a proximity mine, wander off, and the dog wanders over the mine, it gets blown up. I had no objection to murdering dogs, because they're not dogs. They are, after all, just computer game characters. And the very visceral things, particularly when Abby was choking someone out, they always quite deliberately, that person's face was turned towards the camera. You saw them there and choking out. Well, eventually I just looked away, because I wasn't interested, because it's shocking, and shocking pushes you away. And there was too much shock, too much pushing away. I had no consequence for it at all. When people go, ah, 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 and you had a kind of drawn out 10 seconds, of someone slowly gurgling their last life out. In the end, I just ignored it, because it was annoying. And, I was like, oh, flipping heck, here we go again. Shut up. And it might have been a sense of, you know, we want to understand that we're desensitizing to violence, but it wasn't. It didn't work because it was a means to an end. You know, the violence, the murder was a means to an end. It had no impact at all. It was just murdering goons. The fact they called each other's names, so what? Beautiful piece of programming, but, you know, I didn't care that oh, Mary's dead. Well, yeah, fine, and I'm about to pop you in the head with an arrow as well. So you'll be joining Mary very soon. I didn't care. It was too much fun. So actually they missed that point. And again, it had a disconnect between the traumatic cutscenes and the gameplay. Ellie kills a heavily pregnant woman and goes, oh my God. Ugh. But again, we're going, well, firstly, we didn't care that much about Mel because she was slightly annoying and we didn't spend very much time with her anyway. But you've murdered about 50 people just today to get to this point. Totally murdered them. There was no need to kill anyone because you should really be back in Jackson getting on with your life. So, you know, get over yourself. And it was just disconnect after disconnect after disconnect. So, you know, this is why for me that The Last of Us 2 didn't work. Narratively, it didn't work. From character perspective, it didn't work because there was either an established relationship that we had to take at face value, it didn't develop, or the relationships weren't given time to develop. And it was the development of the relationships that made The Last of Us Part 1 so powerful. And it's a lack of relationship building that has made The Last of Us Part 2 for me less impactful. It's a game I enjoyed playing. I liked the game. Did it have a profound effect on me as did the first game, or Plague Tale Innocence, or Hellblade? Those games had massive impact on me emotionally. I thought they were incredible pieces of storytelling, again, because of the relationships in the Plague Tale Innocence and because of the brilliantly realized subject matter of Hellblade. Now, these are standout games on the PlayStation 4 for me, which are, you know, smaller indie titles. Whereas this 30-hour epic ultimately left me cold, because the narrative didn't engage with me, the characters didn't engage with me, and the whole premise of the story was actually, it was done a disservice by the gameplay, because all the traumatic moments were going, well, seriously, you've just murdered tons of people and you're upset about this? You have ruthlessly stabbed people in the throat. You have blown them up with burned them with Molotov cocktails. You know, you've murdered your way to the point where here we are with Nora, and you're squeamish about hitting her with a pipe. You've beaten loads of people to death with pipes. You've strapped scissors to pipes and hit them in the face. Come on. And it was disconnected. There was no feeling that there was a consequence to all the murder that you did, and the consequence didn't feel relevant because immediately after you've gone, oh my God, I've done something awful, you're off murdering stuff again. So, ratings-wise, it's not a 10 out of 10 game at all. You know, from design, from gameplay, from performance capture, probably yes, definitely. You know, it's absolutely superb at those, but from a narrative perspective, from a story perspective, and how the narrative and the story connect with those three kind of 10 out of 10 areas doesn't work. You know, it's a 7 out of 10 for me, if it's anything. It doesn't, in my opinion, deserve the masterpiece that so many of the critics and so many other people have given it. It's not a masterpiece. Certainly not in terms of storytelling and character, from my perspective. So, ultimately slightly disappointing for me. You know, I am playing it through again. I'll get the platinum, but once I get the platinum, will I feel compelled to go back to it? I don't think that I will. Whereas I would quite happily now reinstall Last of Us Remastered on my PlayStation 4 and play it through again and love every second of it. But this game is not a game that I am going to go back to. I'm playing through it on my second playthrough, using, because I want all the collectibles, I want the platinum. I've actually used one of the accessibilities options to use it in play in high contrast mode, which is brilliant if you've got visual impairments, but it's also excellent if you want collectibles because they're all highlighted in yellow for you. So, you know, I'm not even playing it and reveling in those gorgeous graphics. I'm just going, I need to get through it because it's a platinum and I can achieve, and I'll do it in a second playthrough. I won't have to do anything else. I don't care, which saddens me, because I'm a massive advocate of Naughty Dog. what they do is incredible. They have elevated performance capture and storytelling in games through Last of Us and through particularly Uncharted 4 and The Lost Legacy, which is my second favorite Uncharted game after 2. And yet in this case, I think they have tried to push things a little bit too far and potentially beyond their own skill. I hate to say that because I think Neil Druckmann is quite incredible. I don't know Haley Gross as well, but obviously I just feel that that story was trying to be too clever. It was trying to do too much that was shocking and rug pulling, and it was so obsessed with its central narrative that it neglected to build characters around that central narrative. And it is the characters that made The Last of Us so powerful, because it was a very simple story. The Last of Us, getting from A to B, it's like God of War. It's basically, we're here, we need to get there. Everything that happens in between just builds the character. Whereas in this case, the story was the driving force, and the characters took a bit of a second place to that, which was sad and unfortunate. And as a result, it probably will not appear in my kind of top 10 games of this generation, which it should have done. But anyway, that are my thoughts, my rambling thoughts. If you've got to the end of this video, God, well done. I've no idea how long it is at the moment, but I think it's probably about 45, 50 minutes. So if you watched all of this, bless you, thank you. If you have any comments on your own thoughts, please discuss them below. You know, I'm quite happy to engage in intelligent discourse and constructive discourse around this. If you want to troll me, that's fine. I don't really care. Look at me. I'm old enough and ugly enough to take someone trolling me. But let's face it, that just makes you look like a twat. Pardon my Anglo-Saxon. But, you know, I would love to discuss this. You know, I found this game fascinating, and different people's takes on it, having watched some playthroughs and having watched people's kind of opinions of the ending. There is so divisive, in which case, great, let's discuss it. Let's have a proper intelligent discussion about it, because I'd love to know how you think and how you feel. But otherwise, look, keep well, stay safe. We're still in this madness of COVID-19 pandemic, so please keep yourself safe and well. Look after yourself and those people around you. If you have enjoyed this, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to drop a comment about your thoughts, I would love to hear what you think. And if you'd like to see more things like this, I don't do quite as many videos. In fact, this is the first video I've done on this channel in over a year. So I'm self-employed and I've been way too busy building my business to do any of this kind of stuff. But I felt moved and compelled to do this particular one. But do check out some of the other stuff that I've got, and I will try to get some more content out. But otherwise, thank you very much for watching. Keep well, stay safe, and I'll catch you next time. Bye for now.